90, Bay.
90.
We got shots fired at the apartment complex behind Winn-Dixie on 23rd, Beck Avenue.
90, are we involved?
I already just shot at it, so it's going to be a signal 5 suspect out of Walton County, possibly.
Let's head right to Jenny Stanwood with new information to us just into our newsroom now. Jenny?
Calvin, we've been watching this for a few hours now. Police and first responders under fire, shot at by a man who was holed up in an apartment complex in Panama City. Our sister station is now reporting that man is dead, but not before police say he unleashed a barrage of bullets.
I remember exactly where I was 8 years ago at the IHOP eating lunch with my mother. We had just been served our lunch.
I was heading to the beach. I was a captain of the West District at the time. And heading out to the beach, being May, we were busy, so went out to see how the call volume was. Got to 23rd and Beck Avenue, took a right and made it to Michigan when all of a sudden the call of shots fired came out.
So I got a call from my counterpart, a captain with Walton County Sheriff's Office, who had requested our assistance. The individual was a suspect in a homicide that they were working.
Well, I was there.
No.
Where are you?
He's in that apartment in the building over there. I don't know, he started shooting that damn car I was going to.
Oh my God.
I remember sitting there for about 5 seconds, kind of like the situation on 9/11 where President Bush got whispered in his ear what was happening. And I just remember taking a second to collect my thoughts, because as sheriff and as a new sheriff at that time, that's your worst nightmare, is to have your guys that you lay awake at night, every night worrying about, being basically pinned down by gunfire.
We were conducting surveillance, and the Panama City Fire Department showed up. So I contacted a supervisor at Panama City and asked them if they had, let people know that we were conducting surveillance on what we were told was a probable homicide suspect. They had not, I don't believe, relayed that message, asked us to go make contact. So whenever made contact with the fire department, was trying to ascertain why they were there. They were there for a complaint of a smell of gas.
So strangely enough, the fire department had been called because there was an extreme smell of gasoline or fumes coming from the apartment, which happened to be the suspect's apartment. He had flooded the place with gasoline, and he had set up a lot of booby traps, which we found later. But they were there investigating that smell complaint, and apparently had made contact with him, and he was not cooperative and wouldn't leave while they were trying to evacuate everybody else in the apartment.
And so I told them, we've kind of got an issue. If you're having to go down there for the safety of these residents, maybe we can go get some people out of these buildings and then figure out, maybe what's going on. So at that point in time, we had made a plan. I made a plan, being the highest ranking person there, to send some officers around to the back. And then about 5 of us were going to approach with a couple of the firefighters to go door to door into the apartments to try to get people out. So as the guys were going around the back side of the building to create some containment for us, we started walking down the sidewalk, and that's when the first shot was heard. And at that point in time, it was just curious, trying to figure out what exactly had happened. We heard a gunshot. We didn't have a reaction where we were at, except for everyone heard it. So I had to go to the back of the building, basically almost to the fire truck, looked, saw a couple officers there basically taking cover, asked them if they had shot. They relayed that they had not shot, they had been shot at, and then everything started to unfold very quickly after that.
Based on what I was hearing on the radio, I knew that we were probably going to need an armored vehicle, so I immediately requested both Walton County's, what we call an MRAP, as well as Okaloosa County's Bearcat, because it was going to take 1 hour for Walton County and a couple of hours for Okaloosa to get to us with those. And just basically from what I'd been told on the phone, as well as what I was hearing on the radio, I knew that I better get those rolling this way.
I tried to call Lieutenant Corum back.
Just prior to the city policemen pulling up, we had made a couple radio calls out. And I actually had put my radio on the base of the sign for the apartments. And I'd put my radio there because that's where I was taking cover. And my phone started ringing, and I was down on my knees. So just, I guess, out of kind of just instinct, took it out, put it on the deck, hit answer, and it was him.
And I won't ever forget this, and I still can't believe it to this day, but when I called Lieutenant Corum, He answers the phone.
And he was like, "Hey, I'm hearing, we've got a situation down there." I said, "Yes, sir. He's shooting at us. He's actually shooting now." And he fired some more rounds. And he was like, "Oh, okay, we're coming down there." I said, "Yes, sir. Be careful."
And as you can imagine, jump in my car. I'm peeling out the back. That Tahoe, by the time I got there, smelled like it was going to burn up, as well as everybody with the sheriff's office.
There was a female reporter interviewing a gentleman on 23rd Street, on the very north side of 23rd Street. They were quite a ways away from the scene. And during the conversation, the target came out the window and started firing again at everybody. And a few of those rounds, I think, went zinging by their heads. And at that point, they realized that we probably don't need to be on this location, and they moved quickly.
Like I said, there haven't been any shots in a while, but there was easily, probably over the course of all the shooting, there are shots now. Shots fired now. I'm gonna go.
All right, well, as you all can hear right now, there are shots going off. We don't have a lot of information right now, but we'll be sure to bring you more information as we learn more.
So shots fired came out over the radio, and I was about a block-ish away, so immediately went to that location. They said it was coming from the rear of the apartment on the second floor. So as I pulled into the apartment complex, I was met by Lieutenant Coram. There were no shots being fired when I pulled down the street. I couldn't hear anything happening when I pulled up. Saw a lieutenant and kind of just got a quick brief of where everybody is and what exactly is happening. In the middle of that brief is when the suspect came up on the front side of the apartments, which face Beck Avenue, and he unloaded probably a magazine's worth of high-caliber rifle rounds at us. And I was able to move my vehicle. I was still in drive, had a foot on the brake, so I immediately threw forward up to a fire truck that was there.
I was on the phone with Major Baldwin, or Captain Baldwin at the time. He was basically trapped between those two buildings and had been engaged in the active gunfight. We were devising a plan to extract the officers and to get a tactical team into that area so we could then develop a tactical plan for how we were going to neutralize the shooter. We were standing behind a Ford Explorer, and a volley of rounds went off, and one hit the hood of that vehicle. And there's a video of a group of us that when it hit, we were making ourselves very tiny. But it could have certainly, if it would have been just at a different angle and had come through the window or missed the vehicle, we were certainly in a dangerous spot.
I will be honest with you, this felt like the most helpless thing. At that time, I didn't have a rifle issued to me, which we do now, and these are perfect examples why we need rifles. But just sitting behind that, knowing that my guys are taking rounds a couple hundred yards from me, and that I can't get up there to help them because we're just basically pinned down.
So there was a patrol car that pulled down Beck Avenue, and one of our green and whites pulled down Beck Avenue, and they immediately took fire from the suspect. They were able to bail out of the vehicle, hide behind the wheel wells, and just hunker down because he was just shooting the cars up full of holes.
It was clear from the radio traffic and the phone calls that I was getting is that we had multiple officers that were engaged with the subject that were pinned down behind their vehicles, or in the case of some of our guys, they were pinned down between apartment complexes and couldn't move from there. And it was really the worst tactical nightmare because we're dealing with a shooter with a rifle from an elevated position on a very busy roadway.
The first priority was to secure the people, the civilians and the firefighters that we had. So we were able to secure them off to another building that was perpendicular on the north side of that structure. I went to my vehicle, which was giving me a vantage point to actually see what I would call the percussion of the fire coming out of the far window in the middle of the building. It was pretty close to that point in time that I had obtained my rifle and my body armor and was confirming that people knew the situation that we had to not come running down to where we were at due to the fact that we had an elevated shooter with a long rifle.
Being the senior commander of the scene at the time and also the SWAT commander, I knew that this was going to be a situation where we needed to get evacuations happening quickly. We needed to have a quick command and control of the scene and start directing people to get to safety, shut roads down, shut Beck Avenue down, and have a control and command area.
We at the time had a armored vehicle, basically a homemade armored vehicle. It was a bank truck. And Sheriff McKeithen always prided himself on being the myth buster. And he wanted to see if that was bulletproof. So he actually shot it with a pistol, a shotgun, and a rifle. This was, months or year before the Briarwood shooting, several years before. And we found that a rifle round went right through the side of it. So we actually, our shop put ballistic plate metal on the walls of that truck, and that was our armored vehicle. Now, the professional version of of a law enforcement armored vehicle is called the Bearcat, and so we nicknamed that the Pussycat.
The smaller armored vehicle that we had that we'd received and up-armored, which was safe enough at the time to do a rescue, came in and did officer rescues on the officer and the deputy that were pinned down behind their vehicles, so we got them into safety. Somebody pointed out to me at the time that when we had up-armored that vehicle on the sides, that we had not really anticipated, because, again, this was a homemade vehicle. We had not anticipated armoring the roof. So we had gone through that area with the roof of that exposed from an elevated position. So that was kind of a chilling situation that, when we realized that, but we would not have done it any differently. We were going to go rescue our brothers, and that's what we did.
We were fortunate that we also had obtained a property manager that had come to our position. So we were able to get a list of people that were in the 3 rooms to the south that we were not able to get to, and basically contact them by phone and explain to them the situation and that the shooter was elevated and they needed to be on a low floor and they needed to stay inside until we came and got them. We did work out those rescue plans sometime later when we were able to get an armored vehicle and some armor shields in. Sheriff Ford actually went with me on one of those evacuations, getting some tenants out of one of the southern rooms. Aside from that, it was pretty much containment and trying to keep people out of harm's way.
When we got to the other side, got them to safety, we loaded up a tactical team and brought them back into we're going to use that armored vehicle to bring them back into the scene, to the area where the deputies and officers from Panama City were trapped, and the firemen as well. We felt very vulnerable in that, because to do that, we basically had to turn almost in front of his apartment from the window he was shooting out of. Again, now with the knowledge that we didn't have the armor in the roof of the vehicle. And so I called for something that's normally not called for in conventional domestic law enforcement. I felt like in order to get in there and rescue those individuals and be in a position to take this shooter out, I called for some suppressive fire into the window to get his head down, get him where he's not shooting at us. So when we started pulling in our armored vehicle, that's what occurred. And we were able to safely get in there. Then we got our core group together that was members of the Panama City SWAT team, members of the Sheriff's Office SWAT team, began to assemble a plan to hopefully end this situation.
So we were taking cover behind a fire truck, behind the vehicles that were in the front. Sniper team was able to get across the street, engage the target, and we believe at that point he was shot in the hand, and he was unable to return fire at that point.
Then we certainly had the situation where he was contained. There was not any more immediate gunfire that was coming from his apartment. So we used some of our technology. We used our bomb squad robot to come break a sliding glass window and try to get inside the apartment. When we did that, it was obvious that he had doused the apartment in gasoline. So no doubt that his plan was to set the apartment complex on fire.
And you could see that there were gallons of fluid, which turned out to be gasoline, throughout the apartment. The carpet was soaked, and he was clearly looking to blow the place up, set it on fire as a kind of a last resort. He had road flares, the road flares with the caps, striker caps. He had those tied with string throughout the apartment, so as if you walk through a string, it would pull the cap and ignite the apartment on fire as well.
Okaloosa's Bearcat got there, and it has it was purchased through the Domestic Security Task Force too, and it has a ramp system on the top of it to be able to for a tactical team to reach a second floor. So we pulled up to the front. We had to use the armored vehicle to push some vehicles out of the way, and we put another robot into the second floor through that ramp.
When the robot went up and went into the window, unfortunately it failed. It closed the door to the room that it was in, so that was kind of a stuck point for us. We just couldn't move any further at that point. So I put a tactical plan together, and a handful of us went up. I went first to keep cover on the window, up the Bearcat ramp. Could see in a little bit, but not very well because the blinds were shot up and hanging loosely. So I was able to get close enough to cover the room, and then I had Lieutenant Byrd come up to my side, and he pulls down the blinds to where we can clearly see into the room. The room was full of gasoline. There was magazines full of ammunition laying strategically by the window. The carpet was soaked, and there was string to those flares laid up everywhere.
Going in the upstairs, it was just a sign of total chaos. There was furniture just shoved around. There was the window barricades that we had to extract. There was a rifle at the front, in the front room, as well as a rifle in the back room. Shell casings just abound, and ammo cans with preloaded rifle magazines and empty rifle magazines there on the ground.
The amount of fuel in there would have exploded that entire apartment complex across 23rd Street if it had gone up. So we were very lucky that didn't take place.
What we later discovered is that when we entered the building and cleared it and got up to him, was that he was deceased from what appeared to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound on the floor by the bed. What we saw on the bed was a road flare, where we believe he was attempted to light that road flare and throw it downstairs and blow up the apartment. But he also had a really devastating wound to his hand. And what we believe occurred is fairly early in the incident, before we actually brought the SWAT team in using our armored vehicle, is that our sniper across the street, David Sullivan, one of the shots that he took in the same volley that hit the front of the Explorer and hit a lot of other stuff as well, but the Explorer incident where we all had to duck behind that, we think it was that same volley where David took a few shots into the window, and we think that he hit his hand, basically taking his hand off. So he was unable to, based on being incapacitated with his hand and the pain, he was unable to light that road flare, and he took his own life.
I mean, given the information that we had at the time, I don't know how much differently we would have done it. Our hand was kind of forced in the situation. We had, the possible threat to the other people in the building, and obviously to the firefighters. So in that situation as it stood, I think we did pretty well to have made some good decisions early that allowed us to contain the situation. Certainly it wasn't, what we thought we were walking into. But as it went, as far as injuries to the public and attending officers, I think we were very fortunate that it started off well, and that early on we didn't take a casualty, or else the situation would have been drastically different.
Anytime you have a critical situation, it's incumbent on leadership to determine, what we did right, what we did wrong, what gaps do we have. So we were able to use that incident to go to the Regional Domestic Security Task Force and get funding to have a professional armored vehicle, the Bearcat, which I wouldn't trade for the world. It's been the greatest tool that we've got when we get in these situations, and we don't get in them often, but we do have barricaded subjects or high-risk search warrants, and occasionally situations like this that an area the size of Bay County needs one of those. So I'm very blessed that we were able to get that and have that as part of our tools.
We had heroes all day. I mean, everybody there was a hero. I was a deputy that was behind one of the cars. He had ran out of ammunition and yelled at me, and so I was able to pull a magazine from my belt and throw it to him to keep him into the fight. There was guys that were taking care of the firemen and going door to door out of the firing zone per se, and helping the citizens and letting them know that they're going to be okay, just stay where they were. To the officers, to the deputies that were stuck behind the vehicles taking fire, they stayed calm, they stayed protected, and when they were rescued, they got back into helping with whatever was needed with them.
They're absolute heroes, and they faced, in law enforcement, most of the time you can go your whole career and not face a situation like this. It's one of those really defining moments that shows, yourself, who you truly are, as well as, are you living up to your training standards, and are you able to handle a situation like that when it happens? And without fail, everybody on that scene that day, both the ones that were there when it first started to every last person that responded to that, lived up to those standards and did what they had to do to take care of this community and stop a very significant threat. Again, this was he had very bad intentions on a very busy roadway from an elevated position. So, I think if they hadn't been there and taken the actions that they did, I don't know what would have happened.
There was a lot of tears and hugging and sighs of relief when it was all over with. That stress level and that adrenaline dump after, was incredible to experience. And then we can also share those experiences with everybody else. And this is what's going to happen when you get into a critical situation. I've been there, done that, and this is what you can expect. So our ability to train other folks is paramount.
At the Bay County Sheriff's Office, we have some of the best training when it comes to tactics and how you approach things, how you do. We have a very good training division.
Everybody out there was a hero, but these kind of things do have an effect on you. And our profession is waking up to that fact that, these incidents that we go through have a cumulative effect on our, mental, emotional well-being, even our physical well-being. And I know when I still ride by there, I can look up there, and the window that he was shooting out of has been changed and is different from all the other ones. And I still get a very uneasy feeling and still feel some effects from that.
I drive down Beck Avenue all the time. My wife knows it's going to happen pretty much every time we drive by there. It is a place that I had been to many times before. So driving by now, it's hard to not just kind of look over to have a small flashback of the day.
Every time I ride by that place, I always look up at the window, and it reminds me of that day and what we went through and what my guys went through.
I go by quite regularly, and it still gives me goosebumps.
I say this repeatedly, but I see what goes on in other areas of the country and other areas of the state where, the law enforcement may not have the full support of the community, but we are so blessed here in Bay County because, they understood what we all went through that day, and they understood why we did it. And the community just came around us and was so supportive in that. There's so many communities something like that would happen, and there'd be, wringing of hands and second guessing. And, they knew, our community knew what a serious situation this was, and that we were what stood between somebody intent on committing evil acts and them. And we stood up for our community. And so blessed to live in a community that we have that level of support and the outpouring of support after that. And even people still today, there may be people that have moved to the community since then that don't even know what we're talking about. But I think most people that lived in Bay County at that time period will remember exactly what happened that day and the way that law enforcement stood on the line.